Transgender college athlete Lia Thomas is at the center of a brewing culture war, so why are LGBTQ advocates and leaders largely silent on her historic success? Well, I can give you a good reason. We don't like trans success in sports, okay? It's a very insidious problem in society. You cannot be a trans woman, and succeed in women's sports. Otherwise, you are proving that trans women should not be competing in women's sports. So if you're a trans woman and you're in sports, you're doomed from the start. You know, it's very gross. But Lia Thomas is shattering records in the pool. It's time we in the NCAA engage on her performance. Lia Thomas is now the conference record holder in the Ivy League in 2 women's swimming events after an historically dominant performance at the Zippy Invitational last week. In these 2 events, the 200-yard free and 500-yard free, the trans swimmer has the fastest times in the country and is one of the only 2 athletes in each to meet the A standards of qualification, giving her a direct invitation to the national championships next March. You guys get it. She broke a lot of records. She's breaking records. It's pretty cool, right? It's a good accomplishment. Here's an LGBTQ athlete who is dominating her key events. Yet if you look around the LGBTQ community, it's largely crickets. And I think a lot of that is intentional. Most LGBTQ publications and advocates so far seem to be publicly ignoring Thomas's incredible athletic accomplishments. As I write this, only Pink News in the UK, outside of Outsports, reporting by Carly Webb, has published a story on Thomas's record-breaking success that I have found. Who hasn't ignored Thomas's story? Right-wing media and anti-trans forces. Outkick, Fox News, New York Post, Newsmax, various Christian sites. They have seized on Thomas's growing collection of victories and rewriting some record books as evidence that trans women don't belong in sports, that their participation is, quote, unfair. So this is what I'm talking about. If we do not support these people as a community, and we do not celebrate their success, the only people who will be talking about them is the conservatives. That's it. And think about what that's going to do to our messaging. What does it say when we're trying to promote the idea that trans women should be allowed to compete in women's sports, and then when one of them is succeeding to this degree, everyone just ignores it, right? Like that's awful. And nobody's talking about it. And the reason nobody on the left, at least, is talking about it is because they don't want to make it seem like trans women are good at anything in sports. Because if trans women are good at anything in sports, then trans women shouldn't be allowed to compete in women's sports, according to some people, right? They're allowed to compete as long as they're average or below average, not above average. We don't want above average trans people competing. No siree. That's not fair, right? Because testosterone and muscle development and bone density and such. There's just so much misinformation going around about trans female athletes, right? Trans women in sports. And it's really damaging. For years, I've heard trans advocates quietly hope trans women do well in sports, but not too well. It seems many people pushing for trans inclusion in women's sports want trans inclusion in sports. They just don't want anyone to notice. For years, I just read that one. Yet here's the thing, lots of people are noticing. The story of Lia Thomas isn't going away. The coverage from anti-trans advocates isn't going away. And by staying silent, the LGBTQ community collectively leaves Thomas out in the cold. Some of those staying publicly silent are the very people and organizations who have been pushing the NCAA to change its trans inclusion policy in women's sports to base it on 1 year of testosterone suppression. Some of these LGBTQ advocates now want to eliminate that requirement altogether, so trans women can compete in sports with no medical transition at all. Thomas's pre-transition time in the 500 free would have obliterated the national women's record held by Olympic champion Katie Ledecky, who herself has dominated the next closest female swimmers on the international stage by record margins. I'm all for it. I think that we should absolutely allow trans women to compete regardless of whether they're transitioning or not. I really don't give a fuck, okay? And here's why. Because I'm a fucking gender abolitionist. I think that we should just have certain levels of competition based on some kind of, mishmash of skills and stats and records that these people have. Something that is more like even just height and weight, right? Would be more of a accurate measurement of their abilities than gender. Okay? Just straight up, more accurate. Okay? Fully gender abolitionist? I think I am. I just think the concept of gender is stupid. The more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, can we just not with gender? I don't think women like alpha males. For the past few weeks, I've made sure to inform every single woman of my alphaness. Right at the beginning of the approach, I let women know by declaring I am an alpha. This is usually done within the first 5 seconds of speaking to them too. Unfortunately, they always laugh or get creeped out. What am I doing wrong? Does this mean they prefer betas instead? Sigmas? Who knows? We will be talking about Sigmas today, by the way. So yeah, Lia Thomas, I'll just leave it there. Lia Thomas is a very successful trans athlete that needs more eyeballs on her. She needs more attention, and the left needs to do a better job of messaging. It needs to not be, oh, well, trans women actually don't have an unfair advantage, etc. It needs to be, who gives a shit? It's sports. It's sports. Okay? Like, that's it. You know?